15,000 soldiers deployed in a silent arc over the Caribbean, the most advanced aircraft carrier on the planet, slowly moving south. More than 80 dead in attacks that, until recently, seemed unthinkable in this part of the world. And a president who declares, with absolute coldness, that he has already made a decision, without saying what it is. But this doesn't come out of nowhere. It's the repetition of a pattern that has been justifying interventions, regime changes, and coups for over a century, always under the same arguments: national security, regional stability, and protection of strategic interests. For over a century, the United States has used the same excuse to intervene in the region: national security. Guatemala, Cuba, Chile, Nicaragua, Panama, and now Venezuela. Today we're going to analyze what's happening, why, and how it fits into a pattern that has been repeating for over 100 years. August 2025. The United States announces an operation against drug trafficking in the Caribbean, a concept that sounds familiar in North American political discourse, but what actually arrives on the ground does not fit any traditional definition of an anti-drug operation. The first things to appear are 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers: the USS Gravely, the USS Jason Dunham, and the USS Sampson, ships equipped with the Aegis system and Tomahawk missiles capable of hitting land targets hundreds of kilometers away. These are not vessels meant to chase speedboats. They are essential pieces of a large-scale military operation. Then comes the amphibious group of the USS Iwo Jima, accompanied by a massive contingent, more than 4,500 personnel, including 2,200 Marines ready for fast and forceful landings. This capability is not deployed for police operations. It is deployed when a nation wants to make it unmistakably clear that it has the ability to enter foreign territory if necessary. The list continues. A Virginia-class nuclear submarine, 7 additional warships, the gradual arrival of F-35s in Puerto Rico, MQ-9 drones flying over the area like permanent eyes in the sky. And then, on November 11th, the scenario shifts categories. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest and most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, enters the area. Behind it forms a complete strike group with cruisers, destroyers, and another submarine. Altogether, it is a deployment of 15,000 personnel. On September 2nd, the first confirmed attack occurs. A boat identified as a transport for the Tren de Aragua is destroyed. 11 people die. Trump posts the video without nuance, saying, 11 narco-terrorists eliminated. What follows is a sequence. More than 20 attacks, 83 deaths reported by independent media, vessels destroyed in both the Caribbean and the Pacific. These are not drills. These are not symbolic warnings. This is an active and sustained use of military force. On November 13th, the Pentagon formalizes it. Operation Southern Spear, directed by Southern Command, whose stated objective is to eliminate narco-terrorists in the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, when Trump is asked whether he has made a decision regarding Venezuela, he replies, "Yes, I already made it." He adds nothing else. Only, Maduro's days are numbered. On the other side, Maduro mobilizes 200,000 soldiers, according to the government's own figures, and declares that the country is prepared to defend itself by land, sea, and air. What's happening in Venezuela is not new. It's part of a pattern that has been going on for more than 100 years. To understand this crisis, we have to look back, much further back. Between 1898 and 1934, the United States occupied Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and Nicaragua, always to restore order, always to protect American interests. In 1954, Guatemala became an emblematic case. Jacobo Arbenz was president, democratically elected. He attempted an agrarian reform that affected lands of the United Fruit Company, a U.S. company with immense power. The CIA accused him of being a communist. It organized Operation PB Success, leading to a coup. The country entered 4 decades of dictatorship and civil war, with over 200,000 deaths. Then, Cuba. In 1973, Chile. Salvador Allende, a socialist, was democratically elected. The United States financed the opposition, influenced economically, and supported military movements. On September 11th, the coup took place, and Allende died. Pinochet took power. The dictatorship lasted 17 years. In 1983, Reagan invaded Grenada, a small island, justifying it with the construction of an airport with Cuban assistance, which he claimed was a strategic threat. The UN condemned the invasion. And in 1989, Panama. Do you see the pattern? There is always a justification of national security. Communism, drug trafficking, terrorism. The words change, the strategy is the same. Venezuela fits perfectly into that pattern. A left-wing government, an ally of Russia and China, with the world's largest oil reserves. The question is not whether the United States wants to intervene, it's whether this time will be different. Officially, the United States argues that the operation is to combat drug trafficking, but the evidence doesn't support that narrative. Venezuela is not the primary cocaine route to the United States. The critical routes are in Mexico and Central America. And fentanyl, the real public health tragedy in the United States, comes from Mexico, with chemical precursors from China. If the goal was merely to combat drugs, the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world would be off the coast of Sinaloa, not Caracas. So, what explains this deployment? 3 factors better explain what's happening. First, oil. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, 303,000 million barrels, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Iran, more than Iraq. The United States no longer needs that oil directly. It produces enough with fracking and shale oil, but there's a huge difference between not needing it and allowing China to control it. And China controls 84% of Venezuela's crude exports. Every barrel that leaves Venezuela for China is a barrel that doesn't go to the Western market. Second, Russian and Chinese presence. Russia has provided Venezuela with air defense systems, fighter jets, and military agreements. China has made colossal investments, given loans, and secured oil contracts. For the United States, having allies from Moscow and Beijing operating in South America is a direct threat to its hemispheric hegemony. It wants to revive the Monroe Doctrine, Latin America as an exclusive U.S. zone of influence. Third, political moment. Maduro is more isolated regionally than at any point in his presidency. If there's a time to pressure, it's now. The Venezuelan opposition has renewed legitimacy, and Trump, with an agenda that seeks to reposition U.S. influence, finds in Venezuela a place to pressure without facing real military backing from Russia or China, which would hardly intervene directly. In other words, the United States has capability, it has incentive, it has opportunity, and it has an isolated adversary. The combination is dangerous. What will Russia and China do? Key question. If the United States attacks, do they respond militarily? Likely answer, no. Russia is bogged down in Ukraine. It cannot open another front on the other side of the world. They have given diplomatic support, signed agreements, but have not sent troops or significant equipment since this crisis began. In 2018, Russia sent Tu-160 bombers to Venezuela as a show of force. In 2025, it only sends press releases. China has never participated in military conflicts outside of Asia. Their doctrine is clear: economic influence, not wars. They may condemn, they may impose sanctions on the United States, but they won't send soldiers. Maduro is, effectively, alone in front of the world's greatest military power. The Panama Precedent. Operation Just Cause, 1989. December 1989. President George Bush orders the invasion of Panama. Objective: capture Manuel Noriega, a military dictator, accused of drug trafficking, a declared threat to U.S. citizens. Sound familiar? 27,000 soldiers entered within hours. Within days, the regime fell. Noriega took refuge in the Vatican embassy. Marines surrounded him with speakers playing rock music 24/7. He surrendered. He was extradited to the United States, tried, convicted. He died in prison. For Washington, it was a resounding success. Quick entry, quick exit, regime change. Lindsey Graham, Republican senator and close Trump ally, explicitly said in November, "Bush Sr. overthrew Noriega. We can do it again." Why Venezuela is different? Venezuela is not Panama, and the differences are critical. Size. Panama has 75,000 square kilometers, Venezuela has 900,000, 12 times larger. Population. Panama in 1989 had 2.5 million inhabitants. Venezuela today has more than 28 million. Armed forces. Panama's defense forces had 12,000 men, of which only 4,000 could really fight. Everything centralized in the capital. When the United States destroyed the headquarters, they collapsed in 3 hours. Venezuela has between 130,000 and 160,000 active-duty military personnel. Scenarios. 4 possibilities. None of them are good. Scenario 1. Prolonged pressure. The United States maintains its military presence, conducts targeted attacks, applies harsher sanctions, and waits for internal fracture in the Venezuelan government. This is the option with the least risk and likely the most viable. Scenario 2. Selective attacks. The United States attacks specific targets inside Venezuela: military bases, drug trafficking facilities, regime infrastructure. Maybe an attempt to capture or eliminate Maduro directly. Trump has already authorized CIA covert operations. The Wall Street Journal reported that the Pentagon has identified ground targets linked to the regime. Bombings against bases, infrastructure, or regime leaders. This could open the door to an escalation that no one can control, especially if there are civilian casualties. Scenario 3. Total invasion. The most extreme scenario. A large-scale invasion, like Panama but on a massive scale. It would be the first U.S. war in South America. Tens of thousands of soldiers, months of combat, thousands of dead on both sides. And then they would have to occupy a country of 28 million people who do not necessarily want foreign troops in their territory. Probability: low, but not zero. It all depends on how far Trump is willing to go. Scenario 4. Chaotic collapse. Perhaps the most likely and most dangerous. Maduro falls, but there's no orderly transition. The military fractures into factions. Militias take to the streets. Criminal gangs like the Tren de Aragua take advantage of the power vacuum. Venezuela becomes a failed state. Millions more flee to Colombia, Brazil, and Peru. A massive humanitarian crisis throughout the region. The United States, with the moral responsibility of a disaster it helped create, but no capacity or will to resolve it. It's the Libya scenario. It's the Iraq scenario after Saddam. And it's perfectly possible in Venezuela. Right now, 15,000 U.S. soldiers are waiting for orders in the Caribbean. A nuclear-powered aircraft carrier points toward Venezuela. A president who says he has already made a decision but doesn't say what it is. We don't know what will happen. We don't know when. We don't know how many will die. What we do know is this. This is nothing new. It's the same pattern as always. Always the same justification. National security. Always the same promise, stability and democracy. And almost always the same result, decades of consequences that nobody anticipated. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And this rhyme sounds very familiar. The Venezuelan people, as always in these cases, will pay the highest price, no matter who wins. And while no one can predict the outcome, the only certainty is this. The situation has already entered a phase where any mistake, any miscalculation, any minor incident can trigger something much bigger. This hasn't ended. This has just begun. Subscribe to this channel to find out if you want Venezuela not to be invaded, and if you do, leave me a comment. I'll be reading them. Have a good day.